Welcome to Big Beacon Real Innovators and Innovations. I'm Dave Goldberg, and I'm here in beautiful Douglas, Michigan, on the shores of Lake Michigan. And we're pleased to have with us, joining us today from the Netherlands, we have Jennifer Herek. Jennifer is Professor of Physics at the University of Twente in the Netherlands and Dean of the new University College Twente that merges technology and liberal arts and sciences in an effort to create new engineers. The innovative program of liberal engineering is based on project-based and student-led educational concept where cooperative teaching and learning are central. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here from sunny Enschede in the middle of the afternoon, indeed.
Isn't it? It's just every time we do this, it just amazes me that I can hop on the video and be talking to someone halfway around the world in this very convenient way.
It's amazing, isn't it?
So I'm anxious to talk to you about the exciting initiatives at Atlas and University College Twente. But before we jump in, what one or two things should our audience members know about you personally and professionally?
Well, maybe it's interesting personally to know that I'm actually an American academic, born and raised not far from where you are, just across the lake in Wisconsin, in central Wisconsin. That my education, my academic upbringing was all in the United States, starting at a very fine liberal arts college, Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin, and then followed by a pretty good graduate program at Caltech, where I got a PhD in chemical physics. So I'm not officially an engineer, but
we won't hold that against you.
I have an affinity to it nonetheless. Yeah. So for the past 20 years, I've developed a research career here in Europe, in Sweden, in Germany, and now for the last decade or so in the Netherlands, where here for the last 8 years I've had the chance to become a professor of physics and leading a research group called Optical Sciences. My research is in spectroscopy and imaging. But the reason I'm really here is because a few years ago I had the opportunity to become Dean of the University College Twente, and for me that's been a real thrill, a real honor, and in a way it feels like coming a bit full circle, coming back to my own roots in liberal education, and doing it now here at a research university, a technical university, with a focus on integrating technology and social sciences.
Yes, it's so interesting that your career has spanned disciplines and spanned the continents, and it seems like more and more that's the norm and less unusual. Although you started doing this quite a long time ago, so maybe you were on the cutting edge. We met back in I think it was May of 2013, and I think the program that we're going to talk about was just starting then. So maybe you could explain to listeners some of the distinctions here between University College Twente and Atlas. But what is this the stuff of the programs that you're involved in?
Well, in a sense, it's one and the same. So University College Twente is the name of the college, of the institution that's within the University of Twente, within a technical university with a full-fledged research university here with bachelor, master, PhD education. But the University College concept is something that was introduced here in the Netherlands about 15 years ago and is now really proliferating here. Just about every Dutch university now has a college which is based on the American liberal arts college concept, based on a broad bachelor education, a broad foundation, which then, here in the Dutch system is almost always coupled with a master's follow-up. So our institution here is the University College Twente, and our educational program is called Atlas, and that's maybe you're more familiar with that term. And Atlas stands for Technology and Liberal Arts and Sciences. That's the name of the program within the University College Twente that all of our students are following right now.
So it's interesting as I go around the world, you see things that are similar and then you see things that are different because of the different culture, the different countries and cultures. And so I'm curious, what was it in the Netherlands that gave the impetus to these university colleges a decade and a half ago? What was the motive force that caused that movement?
Well, I think it's the same force that caused a lot of movement in education in Europe 15 years ago with the signing of the Bologna Accord, which tried to create more uniformity in education, more opportunities for mobility in education. And yeah, the Netherlands was, I think, really one of the front runners, and that was also thanks to a few critical people who had the right experience, who knew about liberal education, and who wanted to establish that here. We're in fact, we were the 7th program to start here. The first ones were already in 1999 in Utrecht, based on a much more traditional, everything liberal arts, from humanities, social sciences, and the sciences. Whereas the more recent university colleges have a bit more profile. For example, ours now being more of an engineering college, and therein with this aim of educating new engineers.
Well, very cool. And when we've talked since we met, and I think already you've had some fairly exciting experiences and things happen in Atlas and University College. So, what are some of the salient stories or things that kind of struck you as really, really interesting or cool that have happened so far?
Well, you have to keep in mind that we're still very young. We
Yes.
started just 2 years ago with our first students. We are a 3-year program, like all bachelor programs in the Netherlands, a 3-year bachelor's program. And so our first generation of students are just completing their 2nd year. But what's remarkable is already in that time to be witness to the sort of transformation in those students, to see those students develop confidence, to develop a sense of purpose, and to develop poise, the students who are really taking control of their learning and of their life as what we're aiming for in the program. Not only students, but also teachers in the program. It's an entirely new educational concept, and it requires courageous teachers who are open to be pushed to their limits, and teachers themselves also gaining courage in their convictions, and a real a real sense of reinforcement that what we're doing here is right and is necessary.
And so how does that, so say for some of the students, and what are some particular instances where students did something that was sort of unexpected or interesting, or where they went out from the crowd and did something that sort of surprised you, or that you nodded your head and said, oh, that's really cool?
Well, as I said, students more and more taking charge, which is what we ask of them. We require all of our students at the beginning of every semester to write their own personal development plan, together with a mentor, outlining what their aims are, what they hope to learn, what they plan to focus on in terms of not only the domains that we teach, the domains being the engineering, the mathematics, and the social sciences that all students have a foundation in, but also their more personal choices within it, the focus on personal development. We have 6 learning lines that all of our students focus on. And it's quite a confrontational experience for students to have to do that, to be the ones who can map out their curriculum. But that's what we do. I mean, of course it's supported within the program. But that kind of putting students in the driver's seats is an experience. And then at the end of the semester, when those same students have to begin the whole assessment process, they begin it by writing a self-assessment reflection of what they've achieved, providing evidence for their learning. And that's it's impressive to see the students and the ingenuity that comes into creating those kinds of those kinds of documents, I would say. But also within the program itself, the kind of the program being small scale, being very intensive, is also really very nimble and allows a lot of adaptation on the fly. And part of that in the beginning was that we would offer them the possibility to arrange for them lectures on demand. That if their investigations were moving in a given direction where they decided, for example, that they needed some reinforcements in statistics, we could arrange that. We could make that happen. And we did, and we do. But more and more, we see that the students, they bypass us. They go themselves to the experts, to the teachers, sometimes outside of our own fly, and they make it happen. And that's really, satisfying to see them do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You alluded to some of the resistance. You used the word confrontation, that it was a confrontation at first, and I'm thinking back to the iFoundry experience in 2009, and we said we put the kids on teams, and we said, well, and the teams were aligned with their aspirations, but then they complained. They said, well, tell us what to do, and we said, no, you need to you want to be an entrepreneur, go build something, or you want to save the world, start saving. And then they did, and it was very cool. But there was this moment at the beginning where they didn't believe that we really were serious about it. And so it seems like there is kind of a, given that the traditional culture is so different, there's a place where you kind of have to hold fast to this. And I'm hearing that in your story. Is that what that confrontation was about, or?
Well, in a sense, our students are selected for their affinity to the concept, for their ability to work in teams, for their openness to feedback, to both receiving it as well as giving it. Yeah. But we're a selective program. We're not taking students who are already enrolled in our engineering and sciences programs here at the university, but students who come to Atlas, they apply to Atlas. And they know what they're getting into. At least, more and more they're beginning to. We're still new, of course, but I think already there's this sense of now real understanding and real belief in this model that extends not only from, born believers like me, but also to our team of teachers and to the students themselves who are really our best ambassadors for the program.
And you just mentioned the teachers again, and earlier you talked about how this has been a change for them. What's their journey been like? So I think that there is also a sense that growing up in a traditional culture, you have that culture in your blood, and to show up differently and to trust young people in this way. What's the journey been like for your faculty? Where did they start from, and where would you say they are in terms of their transition?
Yeah, for many of them, indeed, it requires a lot of courage. And there's already been a lot of growth and evolution in these last 2 years within our core team. Now, our teachers, like our students, were also selected, handpicked from all of the faculties here within the university. They all have joint appointments in their home faculty as well as in our program. And many of the core team members were chosen because they already had some experience or some affinity for liberal education, and who were, but not all of them, and certainly not many of the guest lecturers that we pull in from the rest of the university community. But I think overall there's been a real sense of pleasant surprise in what our students are capable of, and there's been a real...
By the faculty. That is, yes. So the faculty are surprised, and when they talk, what are the things they call out that have been surprising to them?
Well, these students, they're fearless, right? They're not afraid to push. I mean, the Netherlands doesn't have a very strong hierarchical culture to begin with, and so students can be demanding without fear in that regard. But indeed, it's this level of trust, it's this level of independence and support that at first, of course, we gave the students, but now more and more they take that from us. And we see that in their interactions beyond the program as well. They are a different type of student, a different breed.
Very cool. And so, and actually, you just called out the differences in national culture, and one of the things that's been so interesting, and you called out the Netherlands as a place where uh, hierarchy and respect for power and leadership isn't that difficult of a barrier to overcome. And yet, and there are other cultures, for example, Singapore, where it's significant. And yet it's interesting that when it comes right down to it, this notion of being unleashed and the courageous, fearless student can take place anywhere. It's just the cultural obstacles of the national culture sometimes are different, but the story is the same, and this kind of unleashing and fearlessness. In the words that you're using, words like courage are the same words in Singapore as they are in the Netherlands, are the same as they are in the United States.
Yes, yes, I believe it, and I've seen the examples, your own examples as well, and that, and it's especially taken in, in context, in the setting, and creating that, and the community aspect of our program is also so critical to its success. The fact that we have a residential college program, which is also not very typical in the Netherlands, that as it is in America, that the students study together, they live together, they learn together, right? It's a cooperative learning, cooperative teaching philosophy that we have here, and it's quite unique in that regard.
So, and so you might break, so the residential piece makes sense, and are they taking the same classes together, or do they break out and are in different classes?
Well, we have a sort of a overarching structure, a template for our students, especially in the first year, but there's still within that quite a bit of choice and possibilities, and certainly as they move into their second year, there's a lot more tailoring as the students are beginning to prepare for their eventual master's studies, because that's of course another big difference between these programs here in the Netherlands versus those in the United States. In the United States, many students, their stopping point, the entrance point into the world is after their bachelor's. And if you only have a bachelor's degree, a liberal arts bachelor's degree, that can be a challenge in getting your start in a career. But in the Netherlands, just about everybody continues after the bachelor's with the very specialized master's degree. And so that's really, I think, the appeal and what makes this even more attractive here than in the United States, that you have this broad foundation which you are beginning to specialize, making choices, but the specialization really comes in that master's phase, which is, also what gets you your first job, you could say, but it's what's underneath there, which is what will really allow you to thrive in the changing job market, society.
Yeah, and that's actually raises a good point about the, so in the Netherlands, the three, at Delft they told me that 3 + 2 = 7.3 was the calculus of how long it took to get a degree under the system. But actually with your system, this is interesting because now you're going to have this fairly different educational experience for them with the 3 than say a 3 in civil engineering or a 3 in computer science, and so then they're going to go do the +2 in something that's fairly traditional. What's your thinking about that? And it hasn't. I know it hasn't happened yet, but certainly you're thinking about it. What are your thoughts and
certainly I'm thinking about it. Certainly our students. That's of course their biggest concern is indeed. Frankly, I have every confidence that they will get into those programs. They will be different, no doubt. Just as I was different coming from Lawrence University and entering Caltech. When in my first weeks at Caltech, I, very humbly failed all of my entrance exams and, was given a pile of books and a year to catch up. And part of that catch up, in fact, was an opportunity to teach undergraduate quantum mechanics, a topic that I had never encountered yet in my liberal arts education in chemistry. Yeah. But now it was certainly something very relevant for me, and so I was given an opportunity to, I was different, but different in a good way. And within that year, I made up for whatever content deficiencies I had. I knew how to learn, after all, and I finished in time. And I think, yeah, afterwards I still had something extra, and so we convey that message to our students. I don't want there to be any surprises. Of course, they will be different from a student who chose for a monodisciplinary study, but different in a good way.
Well, and that's interesting, and I think we've already seen that. For example, well, you told your story, and so you saw it, but I think we've seen it with some of the experiences of some of the Olin grads going off to graduate programs. So their first year, I had a teaching assistant in our user-oriented collaborative design knockoff course at Illinois from Olin, and her experience was one of not having all the coverage of the knowledge, but what you just said, this learning to learn ability, and so the ability to dig in and figure it out, and you know, you got the pile of books, and you need to know something because you want to know it.
Exactly.
And so I think that is very powerful, and is actually in many ways the central fact of this kind of, or the central feature or characteristic of this type of educational experience versus the Cold War educational experience of covering a fixed body of knowledge.
Yes, yes, I completely agree. But this is, again, a cultural issue, and yeah, I see it in my own home faculty in physics, where there is this constant struggle on the content and the curriculum and the depth, where students who choose to study physics here in our 3-year bachelor's program, you know, their whole transcript is composed of physics and math and physics courses. And even though they're required to do a minor, many of them are even encouraged to choose to do a minor in physics, more physics. And, well, I'm not saying that there are not students for whom that's the right choice. There are still excellent students who choose for these monodisciplinary programs and who are ready to go deep and to dig in. But more and more students are not. More and more students have multiple talents and a desire to develop those talents now, and only later decide how to best use those combination of talents. That's what we're trying to support.
Yeah. So, and we're about 8 minutes from the end of the program, and so what are the next steps for the program? So you're 2 years in. What things have you learned and corrected? What are the things that you're planning on doing next?
Well, curriculum-wise, we've learned a lot, and we're constantly correcting, but never with the aim of perfecting. It's not our goal to develop some perfect curriculum that we lay out for the students. We really want to stay in tune with our students and what their needs are, putting them first. But we've learned a lot by doing it, and also how to do it, how to teach, the kinds of partnerships that we have here, where we tag team science and social science teachers on topics, is really working well, brings out a lot of creativity in the program.
All right, so that kind of pairing of social science and science together, that's worked. What else? What other big rocks of learning have there been, of things that you didn't know going in? Something big that you learned as as part of the program?
Well, one of the big things that we've learned that we're still trying to tackle is because we aim to be a program at the interface of technology and social science, but finding problems, big problems that really require, in an integral way, those two perspectives has been a bit of a challenge. All of our projects, which form the themes of every semester, they of course you can bring both perspectives into those projects. For example, last semester, our second-year students, worked on the theme of Mars colonization. They worked together with a Dutch foundation here, which aims to establish a colony of people on Mars, starting 10 years from now, it's very ambitious, perhaps overly ambitious, but nonetheless, a very interesting project that, of course, has many technological as well as social behavioral issues integrated. And our students focused on the extremes of that project, from the nanoscale all the way up to the mega scale. But it's too easy still for students to find a way to differentiate, to separate the technology and the social sciences, whereas we're really looking for an integral.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, and so here in the States, we've got these grand challenges, and there are a lot of people that are very excited about them, and I they're hard to argue with. They're big things like brain science, and so there's a scientific component, there's a social component, but like you say, when the topic is so big, it's easy to separate and specialize. So how do you pick projects in a practical setting that let the kids dig into both? And the one place I've seen that work really nicely is in the design courses, in user-oriented collaborative design, where you, instead of starting with technology or a quote unquote problem, you start with the people. You say, all right, I'm going to go study a group like firemen or soup kitchen operators or tattoo artists, and that sounds silly and it sounds too small. Where's the social science going to come in? But by starting with the people, and then working towards problems and then technology, that seems like somehow that's a nice way to get it down where it's a real problem, where real people are involved, where you can talk to real people, but you can also have the technology work into it. Some of these grand challenges, in my estimation, are too big to exactly along the lines that you said.
Yeah.
So
I would also say that the next step in our program is, maybe also a nod to this opportunity, is for us also to start exploring and exploiting our network a little bit better, getting connected with other educational innovators out there, especially in this area of new engineering. Because we're at a point now in our program, after 2 years of fairly small, fairly experimental classes. Our intake has been only 25 these past 2 years, but now we're also ready to make a step. So it'll be interesting to see how we grow in connection with the other programs that are beginning to also really thrive around the world.
Well, and we'll look forward to working with you and some of the other innovators as part of the Educational Innovators working group, and I think that kind of sharing, especially among people that have paid the price of actually doing it and had some real learning and have some real experience, but also have many questions still, that those kinds of interactions are going to pay off. What kind of, if there are people going to watch this or watching this now and watching it later, and many of them will be interested in doing something similar or something related to this, what advice would you give to people that were thinking about a change initiative along these lines?
Well, my first advice would be, don't call it a change initiative. That's tough. Change management is very difficult. The key, I think, is to start fresh, to carve out some room, to do something really new, really fresh, with a vision, bring together people, creative people, and give them space, give them freedom. But this kind of creative pairings also that I mentioned, in our case of putting the scientists and engineers and mathematicians coupled with the social scientists, the philosophers, the psychologists, has also been really inspirational.
So I'm hearing two things, sort of carving out separate space and then making sure that you get people of different minds and mindsets and disciplines together. Those are two important things. Actually, as you said, the first thing, change management guru John Kotter actually now is more explicit about this. He calls change management succeeds when there's a dual operating system. So that you've got the mainline operating system that does what it does, but that you create this space. At iFoundry, we use the language of we called it a respectful space for innovation. And I would call that what you're doing
experimental, which is a playground, which then can serve as inspiring the other half, which is also exactly what we're trying to do here at the University of Twente with this university college. This very innovative way of teaching and learning is also spilling over to the other programs here as well.
Well, and part of turning the separate effort into a change initiative is how do you back diffuse the learning, and I find that when you've got something interesting like this, people want to compete with it. If something new is coming along, then one of the ways in which things get carried over is people see the good stuff over in this other thing, and they want to do it well or as well or better, and so you can actually get diffusion without intentionally diffusing things. So we've got maybe just another minute or so. What else would you like our listeners to know about University College Twente and Atlas?
Well, if we're wrapping up, then let me just tell your listeners that I hope they'll check us out, look further, see what bold things are happening in this corner of the world, with what I think is really resonating with this global movement toward new engineering. In fact, we've recently launched a platform that's called New Engineer that sort of captures our message, our vision, our concept, and is also linked to our program. So they can find that at www.newengineer, that's one word, .nl for Netherlands.
So www.newengineer.nl, and they can find out about that, and that links back to Atlas and the University College. Great.
Yes, it sure does. It sure does. And of course, the open invitation to contact me for inspiration or suggestions. My email address is j.l.herek, H-E-R-E-K, at UTwente, UTwente.nl.
Great.
Thanks.
Jennifer, it's fascinating what you're doing. Bless you for doing it, and wish you good luck and good fortune going forward on what is a very important program and showing the way how this can be done. Thanks.
My pleasure. Thank you, Dave.